The stump. Excellent. And what is this? No, well, you can't see it. This is green. What about out here? Anybody know what this is? Close. It's the shoot. Did you hear the Isaiah? It was the stump of Jesse, and the shoot will grow forth. So this, I'm going to stand next to this because we're going to use our imagination together and think of all the places where new life and hope can come from places that appear desolate. I'm going to give you a little background first. It's always good to have a little historical background about the text. So the text of Isaiah was written in 3 chunks. There's first Isaiah, second Isaiah, and third Isaiah, though we don't talk about it that way. The first 39 chapters or so was probably written in the late 8th century and early 7th century BCE by a man named Isaiah, who was a prophet of the time, living in Jerusalem and part of the priestly caste. Israel at the time was divided into the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. The northern kingdom had been overrun by the Assyrians, and they were occupied. The southern kingdom, where Jerusalem was located, survived by paying tribute to the Assyrians. And Isaiah is a prophet of God, and he speaks out against the rulers of the time and says that destruction will come to Israel because of the way they are bowing down to the Assyrians and the Egyptians instead of following God. And indeed, we know through history that this happened. The Babylonians came in and the Israelites went into captivity. Yet in Isaiah's message, although he's talking about the destruction of the whole people, like a tree cut down, there is a message of hope. For he says that a green shoot will come out, that there will be a remnant that survives. So this is the metaphor that we're going to contemplate together this morning about hope and healing coming from unlikely places. And perhaps this resonates with some of us today. It certainly resonates with me. Perhaps you're feeling in a place of desolation, either personally or in your families, or you're afraid for the national or global political situation, or for this very planet upon which we live. And so we search together for a message of hope, and perhaps, like me, you are a bit overwhelmed by the idea of being only one single person on a planet inhabited by 7 billion other people. But I'm bringing you a message of healing and hope. That's why I'm standing here this morning, and I'm going to offer to you that it takes 3 things. That it takes faith and trust and hope to bring healing. Now, faith is quite a loaded word, but I'm not talking to you today about faith in some doctrine that was devised by men a few thousand years ago. I'm talking to you about a faith that dwells inside of you, deeply and resonantly in your own spirit, that you are a beloved child of God. That in the words of the prophet, that a spirit that brings wisdom and understanding, gives direction and builds strength, dwells within you. That this presence beyond words, that pulses through the universe and courses through your own veins, is with you at this very moment. that you have intrinsic value and goodness. And only this belief, I think, can lead you to personal healing. And then we're going to talk about trust. Trust that what is true for you, your own intrinsic value and goodness, is true for every other living person on this planet. And trust that once we understand that, we will all respond to each other with compassion. And that trust will bring forth the situation Isaiah talks about also in this passage, where the wolf and the lamb romp together. And finally, hope. Hope in the interconnectivity of all of God's children responding to each other in love. And this, I believe, can bring healing on a global scale. When finally, perhaps not in our lifetime, but if we persevere and bring others along with us by our example, that finally the whole earth will be brimming with the living knowledge of love. So I'll start first with personal healing and faith. I said I was going to mention a little bit about our healing morning yesterday. I owe deep gratitude to Good Company Theater, who had Fellowship Hall set up for the best Christmas pageant ever. It was remarkably festive and beautiful, including stained glass windows on the stage. So it was a lovely environment. We placed the canvas labyrinth in the center of the room, and I set up 7 stations around the circumference of the room. I won't mention them all. One of them, of course, was a place where you could come to me in private and I'd pray with you. And there were 2 others that I found deeply meaningful. And I thank Dawn for them because she introduced us to them a few weeks ago when we had a service here. And I thank Dawn for them because I find them so difficult. Now, I don't know if you remember the one with the mirror, where you were asked to acknowledge that you are created in the image of the divine. And then we look down in this mirror and we're asked to see reflected in our own self an attribute of the divine. I find that hard to do. And the other one was this bowl of water that you were invited to place your finger in and then anoint yourself, meditating on the thought, I am a blessing. I find that hard to do too. But it means so much for us to think of ourselves as a place that God dwells. You know, often I refer to myself as a conduit, and my friends in Artist Way, which is one of the women's groups here, call me to task on that. And they say, Sandra, bad word choice. You are a vessel for God's love. Because certainly love is passing through me, but it's touching the vessel that is my mind and my heart and my body and my spirit. And so this miraculous creation of stardust and energy is coming together at this particular time, on this particular journey, to be the house of the divine. And so it is with you too. Your particular stirring of energy and particles is the only avenue that the divine can find to come into this world. And I ask you to make peace with yourself this Advent season and to realize that you are an expression of God's love in everything you do. Now, when I pray with people on those healing mornings, more often than not, they come to me asking that I pray for self-forgiveness. We are so hard on ourselves. So perhaps if you didn't have that chance to sit with me yesterday morning, perhaps that would have been your request. Sandra, will you pray with me that I can forgive myself? And so I offer it now. Please believe me that you are completely and utterly and totally forgiven for whatever it is that you have carried around as the weapon against yourself. Put it down. Stop. And know that you are a beloved child of God in whom God is well pleased. And feel that spirit of love hover over you and enter into you. Have faith that you are a beloved child of the universe. Be healed. Now I start with personal healing because I don't think that any relationship can ever heal if we don't feel loved and forgiven ourselves. Because then every conflict we have is merely a projection of our own self-loathing and our own self-hate. But to come together as two loved individuals gives the opportunity to build trust. And trust is what heals relationships. The dictionary says that trust is the firm belief in the reliability or truth of someone. And in order for relationships to heal, we need a deeper understanding of each other so we can learn the reliability and truthfulness of the person we're working with. I have a wonderful story, contemporary story, about trust. Some of you may have met Imam Sami Aziz. He's a imam at the mosque in Bloomfield, and he came to be present with us at the vigil that South Church participated in after the mass shootings at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando. We held it on the green with members of the community, and because the shooter was Islamic, and because all those murdered were predominantly gay, there was a question around this horrific act about whether or not perhaps this man had been motivated in some way by his faith. So Sammy came and stood with us. He held vigil with us. He understood and sorrowed over the horror of the situation, and he spoke eloquently and in no uncertain terms that no, Islam does not approve of such horrific acts, that it is a faith based on love. And so Sammy, in his day job, is a chaplain, Muslim chaplain in several colleges in Connecticut. But in his spare time, he and his wife go into communities to create dialogue and to build trust between disparate groups. And he's come to the East Heartland Church, and he's currently running a group in Windsor at the First Church there. And he's bringing together, along with the minister at First Church in Windsor, a group of about 90 people. And they break down into small groups of about 10 people, Muslims and Christians, and they talk about all sorts of things. They talk about the religion of Islam. They talk about Islamophobia. They talk about ISIS. They talk about their experiences as human beings, and they build trust with each other. Through deeper understanding, through knowledge, they bridge these gaps that we feel are so wide, and they build trust. So he is an instrument of healing in this world. So then I move on to hope and global healing. And gosh, we all want global healing. And so I was looking for stories, and I thought, well, something big and global, something like apartheid in South Africa, I can find a story to bring to you, or Northern Ireland, or Middle East peace. But what I came across was something called World Healing Day. Anybody hear of this? World Healing Day apparently happens on the last Saturday of April every year. It has a motto of one world, one breath. And countless numbers of people in hundreds of cities on 6 continents get together at 10 a.m. local time, as 10 a.m. moves around the globe, and they come together to participate in mind-body practices, whether it's Qigong or yoga or Tai Chi or meditation or contemplative prayer or sacred dance or Reiki. They come together in New Zealand and Hong Kong and Indonesia and Iran and Tunisia and Israel and Cameroon and Portugal and Belgium and the UK and the United States and Brazil and Mexico. And they participate in practices that have been shown scientifically to decrease the part of your brain that responds in fear and to increase the parts that helps you respond with empathy. Now, some of you may know that I do transcendental meditation, and for 20 minutes a day, I figure that's my contribution to world peace. If I can be peaceful for 20 minutes a day and I'm sending that out into the world, it's a better place for it. But World Healing Day goes on for 24 hours all around the world, in every one of the 24 time zones. And I think this is lovely and amazing and really a hopeful thing. But it wasn't the message I wanted to bring. It didn't quite feel right yet. So I went to the place that I always go when I need to figure out what the message I'm supposed to bring to you is. And that, of course, for me, is the gospel. To the life and message of a man named Jesus, whose birth we are about to commemorate in a few weeks. And you know, the story of Jesus' life and the story in Isaiah that we read today encourage us to find a message or signs of healing and hope in very unlikely places. In a shoot from an obviously dead stump, or from the life of Jesus. For if you think about it, Jesus was born in abject poverty, in a barn, for heaven's sakes, to a 15-year-old girl and a man who didn't really know whether or not he was the father of the child, in a country that is occupied by a foreign power as one of the oppressed. And Jesus lived his life, and all his followers thought that he was going to be their Messiah and bring healing and political accomplishment and freedom to the Israelites, to the Jews. And instead of political success, he was killed by those very same powers. And yet, this man named Jesus is the example of an embodied showing up for what is right and good and just to billions of people over thousands of years. And for me, he is my example of new ways of loving and forgiving, of healing and of hope. And he reminds us that if we open ourselves to the spirit of love in our lives, in that presence with which he was so intimate, we ourselves will do greater works than he ever did. And so this is the unlikely place I find hope this morning. This is the green shoot from the desolation that we see in the world. That this morning, when each one of the 7 billion people were greeted by the sun in the last 24 hours, invariably, the majority of them reached out to the person next to them in love. Regardless of what we hear on the news, and I know it is horrific, at any given moment today, billions of people will extend themselves in compassion and empathy and forgiveness. Billions of people today will make music and laugh and quench someone's thirst. Billions of people today will hug each other. They will share a meal. They will listen to a friend. Billions of people today will care for someone who is ill, say a silent prayer of forgiveness for an enemy, tell a story, water a plant, or respond to a call for help. So remember that you and everyone else is made from stardust. In your cells moves the most ancient of energies that have created the universe. And scientifically now it has been shown through quantum physics that we are connected through that energy intimately to one another. So you are connected to each and every one of those loving and healing moments. Every single one. And as this small blue planet spins in space, today, billions of people will have faith. To repeat in the words of the prophet Isaiah, in the presence of the life-giving Spirit that brings wisdom and understanding, direction and strength to their very being. Billions of people will trust that that same Spirit dwells within them and will act accordingly. And today, billions of people will be the hope of the world. Be one of them. Amen.